basketball has officially become an upper/middle class rich person's sport. It costs a lot of money to get kids playing on AAU teams and travel teams, as well as having kind of year-round trainers. And this is what is required nowadays to make it in basketball and making it in the NBA. So today, if a kid isn't trained year-round, they have almost no chance of making the NBA. And the average American parent doesn't have the funds to invest into this development. Historically, in the NBA, players that came from low-income backgrounds is what made the NBA, because they play with flair, passion, and a hunger that typically comes from not having much growing up. Think Magic, Kareem, Michael Jordan, Wilt, Iverson, LeBron, Shaq, Kobe. So these are kind of the guys that played in the NBA and made the NBA for the decades prior. Today's NBA is filled with mostly players that come from upper middle class, well-to-do families or foreigners. And that's why it seems so uncompetitive and passionless, which is why the ratings are way down. Thoughts on this? Is there greeting storm?
Yeah, I would say there's an element of truth here. There's a huge barrier to entry for a lot of parents and kids out there these days, because the majority of college recruiting specifically and just recognition comes from the AAU realm. And I don't know if you guys ever played AAU basketball, but it's essentially become like a pay to play sort of situation for young kids and families who may not have the means. All of college recruiting is essentially hanging its hat on the AAU system, which starts at like third grade these days. And you play like 80 games a year at least. And then sometimes kids are on 2 different organizations or 3 different organizations, depending on how good they are or how crazy their parents are and wanting to get them recognition. So the whole culture of basketball right now is so broken and odd.
But that's the thing that shows up in the NBA to me. To me, this hits home and is so accurate, because the thing that really bothers me about the NBA, and Scott, we were watching a clip of it the other day either on the show or just before we were recording, of just guys chucking up threes, nobody going after rebounds, so lazy. It's in the middle of a game and it looks like it's shooting practice, and there's no stakes, there's no passion until the playoffs. Granted, that is a different situation, but the kind of that hunger and that tenacity that we saw from some of these guys that we grew up watching in the 90s and the early 2000s, that totally seems to be gone now. And it's so much more kind of finesse and 3 points, and there's not that intensity.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to, that's why I say like there's an element of truth in what this person is saying, but like, I don't want to say it's all attributed to the fact that like those who came from nothing learned how to scrap and fight. Generally, that seems to be true based on like how we've experienced locker rooms and everything. There's just a different grit and determination from individuals who find themselves in positions to succeed if they implement that. But you know, like it seems like the whole culture and style is just me-centric, right? And it's like how do I build my brand? It's not about the team. It's not about like success for the team or the organization. It's a success for me, and how can I amplify that in a multitude of ways outside of just the sport itself. And I feel like that's just seeped into the culture of NBA, as you're speaking to.
Do you think that it will continue to go down and really hit like hockey level popularity, or that hockey will flip the NBA and become the second most popular sport? Is that possible?
Yeah, hockey will flip it, because hockey will be more and more entertaining to watch, because there's so much grit in hockey. That's the whole core of it. And the NBA is just getting softer and softer.
Yeah. I think because the NFL is king, right? And I think the general population that watches NFL and is a fan of the NFL type game and football in general is going to be more attracted to hockey when they start seeing it in more primetime situations. Like ESPN has made a massive deal with the NHL, and now it's becoming more and more front facing for a lot of Americans, to where they'll see what Mikey's saying is that aggression and speed, and they're going to be more attracted to that than the pass around the 3-point line, chucking up 40-footers and just waltzing back.
Yeah, dude, that shit is so boring to watch. And you're just doing this and just like, I mean, I think we have here maybe a clip of a hockey clip that you put in, Scott, that's actually incredible. Like that is, if you know nothing
that's
about
awesome.
sport, that's like
sick.
That's so sick.
Yeah.
Like that's way more entertaining than a dude hitting a 3.
Yeah, let alone like I forgot who the player was, but talking about the aggression and just the the grit and strength and determination of the players. But like a dude took a puck to the face. What was it last week? And his face was like literally the size of a grapefruit, and he was still out there playing. And he's just like, didn't bat an eye, just kept playing. The thing kept swelling up to a point of like absurdity, looking like Elephant Man or something out there. Like, dude, it's like that's innate in the game and the players, and that's just going to be far more attractive to the general American audience who loves football and who's getting tired of watching this. Like, I don't even know what to call. I don't want to be too aggressive on the NBA because we're going to have to cover it here. But like, dude, it's coming through the pipe, man.
We'll cover it aggressively. No, I like the idea that the sports that are consistent with kind of the American spirit and American ideals, which is this tough, aggressive, Americans are all the descendants of people who were brave enough to leave their original country. So there's a little bit of that crazy aggression in all people in the United States. And I love the idea that the sports that we choose to have be our popular sports have consistent values with some of these. And basketball right now, the way that it's going, it is trending in the opposite direction. And it's also why we're getting so many European, like many of the best players in the NBA now are European.
Yeah.
It's not so American.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. That's a weird shift.
Do you think the rise of like 7-on-7 and all these like spring leagues like that in football and youth football could eventually push football towards this AAU style kid development?
That's a great question.
Like really football could run the same risk if that 7-on-7 stuff starts running rampant.
I think that's a really, really good point, actually, and that there could be a risk of that. And we're seeing some of that with kind of the changes in the tackling rule and some of the what we would call softness in the NFL rules. Yeah. But I also think the NFL has done so well and makes such good decisions, especially when you compare it to other leagues. Like they really have their finger on the pulse of the American public, of like the NFL fans. And I think that they will never let anything like that get too far to where they degenerate their product and make it, in the same way that the NBA is. But I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as saying they'll never make a mistake. Because I actually think they are leaning a little too hard in that route. And it is starting to come into play, especially with, we're seeing it in the college ranks, as I bring up again, the recruits and the NIL and demands and so on and so forth. It's becoming more me-centric, and there's a desire to make it more of a player-driven league, which ultimately destroys the team aspect of things. And you can extrapolate that out into the league itself. It's going to have an effect. And we're seeing it even in the gameplay with offenses and how they're leaning toward that more pass happy style of game. And is that the best version of football? I don't know. I don't personally love it. I like to see balance with the run game and everything. So I'm going to push back a little bit and say the NFL is playing with fire.
Well, the NFL also, though, we see the pendulum swing back. Like the best teams in the NFL right now are the teams that are the best at running the football. So the NFL, the nature of the sport, it's kind of can correct itself, and we're seeing that a little bit. So I don't think even if it gets pushed too far in one direction, that it will correct itself back.
Yeah, you're right. It does have a self-correcting mechanism in it, but I also think if you continue to pound it into young developing kids and young developing coaches, it will inevitably run out of that self-correcting mechanism, or it will wear thin. And that's what I'm saying is like, if you keep trying to lean on the game correcting itself without taking it into account in the way in which people are developed or coaches are developed or how they think about the game, that's going to end up rearing its head in the final product. So like I'm saying nothing ever lasts. Good things never last. And that's why we need to treat it, and the NFL needs to treat it as such, as a good thing and as something precious. And I think there's an element of the whole liability aspect of things, the health issue, and so on and so forth, being an element of how this is turning in a certain direction, which is unfortunate for a multitude of reasons. But I still think that the NFL is playing with fire here, and leaning very hard into the flag football. And now that that's going to be part of the Olympics, like there is a concern here from a traditionalist football player and fan.